The conference hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a kilometer, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Representatives from 847 species filled the chamber, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in contained fields of exotic matter. But today they all focused on the same thing, a holographic display showing a small, unremarkable yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Councillor Vector stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically. He was Xinthian, a species that looked like living crystals, and his voice rang through the chamber like bells. Distinguished members of the Council, I present to you the opportunity of 10 generations. The Sol system contains enough neutronium to power our entire civilization for 3,000 years. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Neutronium was the most valuable substance in the known galaxy. It powered faster than light drives, sustained planetary shields, and made modern civilization possible. But it was incredibly rare. However, Vector continued, there is a complication. The system is classified as a protected heritage site. It contains the structures we call the tombstones. The holographic display shifted to show massive structures floating in the darkness of space. They were enormous, each one larger than a small moon. They orbited the third planet from the yellow star, silent and dark. They had been there for 10,000 years, and no one knew who built them or why. Ambassador Tillith of the Ravian Collective stood, her reptilian features showing concern. The tombstones are sacred ground. Our archaeologists have studied them for 6 centuries. We still do not understand their purpose, but the warnings are clear. Every surface is covered with the same message in 3,000 different languages. Let them rest. Superstition, Vector said dismissively. The builders are gone. Dead. Whatever civilization created those structures vanished from history before any of our species even developed spaceflight. The warnings are 10,000 years old. The threat, if it ever existed, is dust. An elderly Morphean delegate, whose species had the longest recorded history in the Council, raised a tentacle. My people have records from before the Council existed. Stories passed down from our ancestors. They speak of the old ones who lived in Sol system. The stories say they were dangerous, that they made weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Several younger species laughed. The Morphean's skin flushed dark with embarrassment. Fairy tales, Vector pressed, meant to scare children. Meanwhile, our energy reserves diminish year by year. 40 systems went dark last winter because we lack sufficient neutronium for their generators. How many must suffer because we fear ghosts? The debate raged for hours. Species with long memories argued for caution. Younger, more aggressive civilizations demanded action. Finally, the vote was called. 423 voted to maintain the protection. 424 voted to begin mining operations. By a single vote, the motion passed. The Archaeological Guild protested immediately. Dr. Serana, a human-sized insectoid who had spent her entire life studying the tombstones, stood before the council with her wings trembling. You are making a terrible mistake. We have barely scratched the surface of understanding what those structures are. The third planet, the one you plan to mine, it is surrounded by more warnings than all the others combined. Please give us more time to study it, but the vote was final. Within a week, the Xinthian Imperial Mining Corporation dispatched its largest fleet to Sol system. 50 massive ships, each capable of drilling through a planet's crust like it was soft clay. The journey took 3 months. When the mining fleet arrived at the edge of Sol system, they paused to take in the sight. The tombstones hung in orbit around the third planet, just as the records showed. Up close, they were even more impressive. Each one was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when you looked at them directly. Some symbols looked like warnings. Others looked like technical diagrams. A few looked like art. Fleet Commander Zask, a practical Xinthian who cared more about quotas than archaeology, ordered the fleet to ignore the structures. We're here for the neutronium deposits on the planet, not to sightsee. Begin drilling operations immediately. The third planet was a beautiful world. It had vast oceans, green continents, and white clouds. But there was no life on it, or so the scanners said. The atmosphere was breathable for many species, but the surface showed no cities, no civilizations, no signs that anyone had lived there for thousands of years. The mining ships descended through the atmosphere. They positioned themselves over the richest neutronium deposits and began to drill. Massive laser arrays cut through soil and rock, boring deep into the planet's crust. The drills sang as they worked, a high-pitched whine that echoed across empty continents. 10 kilometers down, the drills punched through into something hollow. Commander Jask studied the readings with surprise. There's a cavity down there. A big one. Looks like a natural cave system, but it wasn't natural. The drill had broken through the roof of a massive underground chamber. A chamber that was clearly artificial. The walls were smooth metal. The architecture was precise. And everywhere, machinery sat silent in the darkness. The mining crew didn't notice when lights began to flicker on in the depths. They didn't see computer systems booting up for the first time in 10,000 years. They were too focused on extracting neutronium to pay attention to anything else. Deep beneath the surface, in a command center built into solid bedrock, screens glowed to life. Ancient systems ran diagnostics, checking the status of equipment that had sat dormant for 100 centuries. Most of it still worked. Humanity had built to last. A computer terminal displayed a message in a language no living being in the galaxy could read. Perimeter breach detected. Surface integrity compromised. Threat level unknown. Initiating revival protocol Omega. Throughout the underground city, in chambers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, pods began to hum. They were arranged in vast rows, millions upon millions of them. Each one contained a human being preserved in frozen sleep, waiting. The first pods to activate were in the military sections. That was by design. The humans had known that if anyone woke them early, it probably wouldn't be for a friendly reason. The revival process was slow. The pods had to carefully warm their occupants, restart hearts that hadn't beaten in millennia, restore brain functions that had been paused mid-thought. It would take hours before the first humans opened their eyes. On the surface, the mining continued. The Xinthian crews worked in shifts, drilling deeper and deeper. They extracted tons of raw neutronium, processing it in orbital refineries. Commander Jask sent regular reports back to the Council, boasting about how successful the operation was going. But on the third day, strange things began to happen. Equipment started malfunctioning. Drills would suddenly shut down for no reason. Computer systems displayed error messages in languages the Xinthians didn't recognize. Some crew members reported seeing lights in the distance, moving across empty landscapes where nothing should be alive. Technical difficulties, Jask explained to his worried crew. This planet's magnetic field must be interfering with our systems. It's nothing to worry about. But in the depths below, the first humans were waking up. Admiral Sarah Chen opened her eyes and immediately knew something was wrong. The last thing she remembered was lying down in her pod 10,000 years ago. She remembered the vote. She remembered the decision humanity had made together. They would sleep until the galaxy was ready for them. Until enough time had passed that the scars of the war had healed. She sat up slowly, her body weak from the long sleep. Around her, other pods were opening. Military personnel just like her. Soldiers, pilots, tactical officers, the first wave of humanity's defense. A holographic display appeared in front of her, showing the status of the revival. Millions of pods throughout the Sol system were beginning the wake-up process, but it would take days for everyone to be fully conscious. Right now, only a few hundred were awake. Admiral Chen? A young officer approached, his legs shaky. What's happening? Why are we awake? Chen accessed the defense network with her neural implant. Immediately, data flooded her mind. Surface breach, unknown vessels in orbit, active mining operations, weapons charged and drilling into Earth's crust. Her jaw tightened. We've been invaded. She pulled up the feed from the surface sensors. The Xinthian mining ships filled the screen. She could see them extracting resources, cutting into the planet like scavengers picking at a corpse. Should we activate the defense systems? The young officer asked. We could destroy them all in minutes. Chen remembered the war. She remembered what humanity had been capable of when they fought without restraint. She remembered entire species begging for mercy. She remembered the moment when humans had looked at what they'd become and decided they didn't want to be that anymore. No, she said quietly. We swore an oath 10,000 years ago. We try peace first. We contact them. We ask them to leave. We only fight if they refuse. She walked to the command center on legs that grew steadier with each step. The room was filling with other officers, all of them confused and frightened. They looked to her for guidance. "Status report," Chen ordered. Her tactical officer pulled up displays. The mining fleet consists of 50 vessels. They're registered to the Zynthian Imperial Mining Corporation. The Galactic Council has changed since we went to sleep, Admiral. There are hundreds of new species now. The Zynthians are one of the major powers. Have they noticed we're awake? No, Admiral. Our signals are still encrypted with our old protocols. They have no idea we exist. Chen thought carefully. This was the moment that would define what came next. If she handled it wrong, the galaxy might return to war. If she handled it right, maybe humanity could finally take its place among the stars as a peaceful species. "Open a communication channel to the mining fleet," she ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves." On the bridge of the lead mining ship, Commander Zask was reviewing production reports when his communication officer suddenly jumped. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the planet's surface." "That's impossible. The planet's dead." "Nevertheless, sir, we're being hailed." Josk signaled to put it through. The screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a woman with dark hair and eyes that looked ancient despite her young features. She wore a military uniform that Josk didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Coalition," the woman said. Her voice was calm but firm. "You are in violation of Sol system sovereignty. You have damaged our homeworld and disturbed our rest. You have exactly 48 hours to cease all mining operations and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent. Josk stared at the screen in shock. The tombstones weren't monuments to a dead civilization. They were guardians. And the dead weren't dead at all. "Who are you?" Josk managed to ask. "We are the ones you were warned about," Chen replied. "We are the reason this system was marked as forbidden. We are humanity, and we're awake now." The transmission ended, leaving Josk and his crew in stunned silence. In the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Chen turned to her officers. "Begin full revival protocols. Wake everyone. Bring all defense systems online. And someone find me our historical records. I need to know exactly what kind of galaxy we've woken up to." She looked at the screens showing the mining ships still, sitting on the surface, still drilling despite her warning. She hoped they would listen. She hoped they would leave peacefully. But she had fought in the war 10,000 years ago. She knew how the galaxy worked. She knew that powerful civilizations didn't back down from threats, especially threats from species they didn't understand. "Prepare for combat," she said quietly, "just in case they're foolish enough to stay." Above them, in orbit around Earth, the tombstones began to change. The symbols on their surfaces stopped shifting and settled into a single pattern. The pattern was the same in every language, a simple warning that had been there for 10,000 years. But now the warning was glowing, pulsing with energy. The tombstones weren't monuments, they were weapons, and they were waking up too. The galaxy was about to remember why they had feared the humans, why they had been relieved when humanity had chosen to sleep. Why the warnings had said to let them rest. The beast had been sleeping for 10,000 years, but someone had pushed too far. Someone had forgotten to be afraid. And now, the dangerous beast was opening its eyes. The revival centers hummed with activity as millions of pods continued their wake-up cycles. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in front of a massive display screen, watching the numbers climb. 3 million awake. 5 million. 10 million. Throughout Earth, Mars, the Moon, and hidden stations scattered across the Sol system, humanity was returning to consciousness. But the process was difficult. Many people woke up screaming, their minds struggling to understand what had happened. They had gone to sleep expecting to wake up in a few years, maybe a decade, not 10,000 years later. Medical teams moved through the revival centers, helping the disoriented adjust. Counselors explained what had happened, that the galaxy had needed more time, that the sleep had lasted far longer than anyone had planned. Chen herself felt strange in her own skin. She remembered the vote like it was yesterday. She could still see the faces of the people who had argued for and against the sleep. Some had wanted to stay awake, to keep fighting, to claim their place in the galaxy by force. Others, like her, had looked at the cost of their victory and decided it was too high. "Admiral, you need to see this," her intelligence officer said, interrupting her thoughts. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was young, or had been young 10,000 years ago. Now he looked at a computer screen with growing horror. "I've been accessing the historical archives. I've been reading about the war. I was there, Lieutenant. I know what happened." "No, Admiral. I mean what the galaxy remembers about the war, their version of history." He transferred the files to her neural implant. Chen closed her eyes and let the data flow into her mind. She saw the war through alien eyes, read their historical accounts, understood their perspective. What she found made her sick. The war had started small, as most wars do. Humanity had developed faster than light travel relatively late compared to other species. When they finally reached the stars, they found a galaxy already full of civilizations. The first galactic union had existed for thousands of years, a loose alliance of 70 species that traded and sometimes fought but mostly lived in peace. Humans had asked to join. The union had refused. Humans were too aggressive, they said, too quick to anger, too willing to fight. Come back in 1,000 years after you've matured as a species. Humanity had not taken the rejection well. What followed was a war that lasted 300 years. Humans against the entire galaxy. And the terrifying thing, the thing that made Chen want to weep, was that humanity had been winning. The galaxy had outnumbered them 10,000 to 1. They had more ships, more resources, more technology. They should have crushed humanity in the first year. But they hadn't understood what they were fighting. Humans didn't fight like other species. Most galactic civilizations had rules for war. They targeted military installations, avoided civilians, fought with honor. Humans had learned war on a planet where survival meant being more brutal than everything else trying to kill you. They fought with creativity, with viciousness, with an absolute refusal to ever surrender. More than that, humans had bonded with their artificial intelligence in ways other species found disturbing. Most aliens kept their AI carefully controlled, afraid of creating something that might replace them. Humans had welcomed their AI as partners, as friends, as fellow warriors. Human ships were smarter, faster, more creative because the crew and the AI worked as one mind. The archives showed battle after battle. Humans turning asteroids into weapons. Humans hacking enemy computers mid-fight. Humans using psychological warfare that left alien commanders afraid to sleep. Humans adapting to every tactic the galaxy threw at them and coming back stronger. The turning point had come at the Battle of Kepler 442. The Union had assembled their greatest fleet, 5 million warships carrying the hope of the entire galaxy. They had surrounded the human-controlled system, confident that sheer numbers would finally end the war. Humanity had destroyed them in 6 hours. The survivors spoke of weapons that could tear holes in reality, of human ships that could phase through shields like they weren't there, of AI that could predict enemy movements before the enemy commanders even thought of them, of humans who fought like demons, never stopping, never surrendering, never showing mercy. After Kepler 442, the Union had sued for peace. They offered humanity everything: territory, resources, a seat on the council, full membership, anything to make the fighting stop. And humanity had said no. Not because they wanted to keep fighting, but because they had looked at what they'd become and been horrified. They had built weapons that could shatter planets. They had created AI that could wage war without human guidance. They had become so efficient at killing that even they were afraid of themselves. The greatest military minds in human history had gathered for the vote. Admiral Chen had been there, one voice among billions. The debate had lasted months. Some argued they should claim their victory, rule the galaxy, ensure no one could ever threaten Earth again. Others argued that ruling through fear would make them monsters. In the end, humanity had made a choice that shocked the galaxy. They would put themselves to sleep. Voluntary exile. They would seal their entire species in cryogenic suspension and wait. Wait until enough time had passed that the wounds of the war had healed. Wait until the galaxy had forgotten to fear them. Wait until they could join galactic civilization as friends instead of conquerors. The Union had been suspicious at first, thinking it was a trick. But humans had been serious. They had built the tombstones as guardians, programmed to wake them only if someone disturbed the Sol system. Then they had gone to sleep, every single one of them, trusting that someday the galaxy would be ready for them. 10,000 years had passed. Civilizations had risen and fallen. The first Galactic Union had collapsed and been replaced by the Galactic Council. New species had developed space travel. Old species had gone extinct. The war had become legend, then myth, then a story people weren't sure had really happened. And now the Xinthians had broken the seals and woken them up. Chen finished reviewing the archives and opened her eyes. Lieutenant Webb watched her nervously. "They've forgotten us," Chen said quietly. "Or they remember us as monsters. What do we do, Admiral?" "We prove we've changed." We gave them a warning. 48 hours to leave peacefully. If they accept, we let them go. No violence, no revenge. We show them we meant what we said 10,000 years ago. And if they don't leave, Chen's expression hardened. Then we show them why we scared the galaxy into peace. On the bridge of the lead mining ship, Commander Jask was having an emergency conference with the Galactic Council. The holographic display showed dozens of alien faces, all of them arguing at once. "You must withdraw immediately," Ambassador Tillith insisted. "I warned the Council this would happen." "We will not retreat from primitives," Councillor Vector argued. "These humans have been asleep for 10,000 years. Their technology is obsolete. Their weapons are ancient. This is posturing meant to frighten us into giving up legal mining rights." The elderly Morphean delegate spoke softly, but everyone fell silent to listen. "My species remembers the war. We lost 2 billion people fighting them. We begged for peace before they killed us all. Do not make the mistake of thinking they are weak because they chose to sleep." Vector laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Your species tells ghost stories to children. The humans may have been formidable once, but the galaxy has advanced far beyond anything they could imagine. Our shields can withstand Nova-level energy. Our weapons can crack moons. Our AI can calculate 1 billion battlefield scenarios per second. What can they possibly do to us?" The vote was called. Should the mining fleet withdraw, or should military forces be sent to reinforce them? The Council voted to send military support. The Xinthian 7th Fleet was mobilized. 200 warships, the largest military force assembled by any single species in 3,000 years. They would arrive at Sol System in 72 hours. Jask received the news with relief. He had been frightened by the human admiral's message, but now he felt confident. The 7th Fleet was the pride of the Xinthian Empire. They had never lost a battle. They had pacified 12 systems and intimidated twice that many into compliance. Surely a species that had been asleep for 10 millennia couldn't stand against them. He sent a message to the surface. "This is Commander Jask to Admiral Chen. The Galactic Council has reviewed your demands and finds them without merit. We are operating under legal mining rights granted by Council vote. If you interfere with our operations, you will be declared hostile and dealt with accordingly. The Xinthian 7th Fleet is en route to this system. You have 72 hours to surrender." Deep beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Chen read the message and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had hoped they would listen. She had hoped 10,000 years would have made the galaxy wiser. She had been wrong. "How many of us are awake now?" she asked. 50 million on Earth, another 20 million on Mars and the Moon. The deep space stations are still running diagnostics. And our weapons systems? The tombstones are fully operational. The asteroid belt defensive platforms are online. The drone swarms are active. We have approximately 3 million autonomous warships ready for deployment. Chen nodded slowly. "Open a channel to all awakened humans. I need to address them." Across the Sol System, screens flickered to life. Humans who had been asleep for 10,000 years, who were still trying to understand the world they'd woken into, stopped what they were doing to listen to their admiral. Sarah Chen's face appeared on every screen. She looked tired, old, sad. "My fellow humans," she began, "I wish I had better news for you. When we went to sleep, we hoped the galaxy would change. We hoped that given enough time, they would grow past the conflicts that defined our era. Some have. Many of the species on the Galactic Council are peaceful. They remember the war and want no part of violence." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But some have not changed. The Xinthians have refused to honor our borders. They have refused our peaceful request to leave. They are sending a military fleet to force us into submission. The faces watching her showed fear, anger, confusion. Many of these people had never fought in the war. They had been civilians who had gone to sleep hoping for peace. I don't want to fight, Chen continued. I truly don't, but they are giving us no choice. If we do not defend ourselves, they will mine our homeworld and enslave any of us who resist. They think we are weak because we slept. They think our weapons are obsolete. They think we are afraid of them. Her voice became steel. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Not because we want war, but because we will not let anyone destroy our home. We tried peace. They chose violence. Now they will see what humanity is capable of when we fight to protect what we love. She looked directly into the camera. Revival Protocol Omega is now fully active. All defensive systems are online. All military personnel report to your stations. All civilians evacuate to the deep shelters. In 72 hours, the Xinthian 7th Fleet will arrive. And we will teach them the same lesson we taught the galaxy 10,000 years ago. The screen went dark. Across the Sol system, humans moved with purpose. Those who had been soldiers before the sleep returned to their posts. Civilians descended into bunkers that had been prepared millennia ago. Engineers ran final diagnostics on weapons that had sat dormant for 100 centuries. And in orbit around Earth, the tombstones began to glow with energy that made the void itself tremble. The galaxy had forgotten why they feared humanity. They were about to remember. The 72 hours passed like a slow countdown to doomsday. On Earth, humans prepared for war with the efficiency of a species that had been born in conflict. Weapon systems that had slept for 10 millennia roared to life. Computer networks synchronized across the solar system. AI that had been dreaming came fully awake and began running combat simulations. Admiral Sarah. Chen stood in the command center carved into the bedrock beneath the Pacific Ocean. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing the status of every defensive position in the Sol system. Mars had activated its orbital cannons. The Moon had deployed its stealth fighters. The asteroid belt was now a minefield of weapons platforms disguised as space rocks. Status of the tombstones? Chen asked. All 12 are fully charged, Admiral, her weapons officer reported. Each one has enough power to destroy a planet. But they're designed for precision strikes against ships. The Xinthian fleet? They just entered the outer system. Exactly 200 warships in standard battle formation. They're being cautious, scanning for threats. Chen pulled up the tactical display. The Xinthian ships were massive modern vessels bristling with weapons. Each one could probably devastate a small colony by itself. Together, they represented enough firepower to conquer dozens of star systems. But they were following predictable military doctrine. Neat formations, standard approach vectors, by-the-book tactics that any military academy in the galaxy would recognize. Humans had never believed in fighting by the book. Weapons, Chen said quietly. Prepare to deploy Shadow Protocol. Communications, open a channel to the Xinthian commander. The screen flickered and a Xinthian officer appeared. He was young for a fleet commander, his crystalline features sharp with confidence. This was Commander Tarvik, recently promoted for his victory at the Dracis Rebellion. He had never lost a battle. This is Commander Tarvik of the Xinthian 7th Fleet to any human forces in this system. You are outmatched and outgunned. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you cooperate, you will be treated fairly under Galactic Council law. Chen studied him for a moment. He actually believed he was being generous. He thought he was offering mercy. He had no idea what was about to happen. Commander Tarvik, Chen said, her voice calm. I am Admiral Sarah Chen. I'm going to give you one chance that your superiors refuse to give you. Turn your fleet around. Leave this system. Do not engage us. If you do, I cannot guarantee your survival. Tarvik laughed. Admiral, I appreciate the attempt at intimidation, but I have 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Your technology is 10,000 years obsolete. This doesn't have to be a slaughter. Surrender now. Chen felt something inside her grow cold. It was a feeling she remembered from the war. The moment when she realized diplomacy had failed and all that remained was violence. She had hoped never to feel it again. I tried, she said softly. Remember that I tried. She cut the connection and turned to her command crew. Execute Shadow Protocol. Target all 200 ships. Disable only, no kills unless necessary. Let's teach them a lesson, not start a genocide. Yes, Admiral. In orbit around Earth, the tombstones began to emit a frequency that human ears couldn't hear, but that sent shivers through the fabric of space itself. In the asteroid belt, thousands of objects that looked like ordinary rocks suddenly bloomed with engine signatures. In the outer system, what appeared to be empty space revealed itself to be filled with stealth drones, millions of them, each no larger than a human fist. The Xinthian 7th Fleet had entered Sol system expecting a battle. What they got was an ambush from every direction at once. Commander Tarvik was reviewing the tactical display when his sensors officer suddenly shouted, "Commander! New contacts!" Thousands of them. They're everywhere. The display lit up with red threat markers. They appeared from behind asteroids, from under stealth fields, from positions that should have been empty space. In seconds, the Xinthian fleet went from hunters to prey, surrounded by a swarm of enemies they hadn't seen coming. "Battle stations," Tarvik ordered. "All ships, defensive formation. Return fire." The Xinthian ships opened up with everything they had. Energy weapons cut through space. Missiles streaked toward their targets. Kinetic rounds flew at relativistic speeds. It was an impressive display of firepower. Any conventional fleet would have been obliterated. The human drones didn't fight conventionally. They moved like a school of fish, constantly shifting, never where the targeting computers predicted they would be. They weren't just fast. They were intelligent, each one thinking independently while coordinating with millions of others. When Xinthian weapons fired, the drones were already gone, leaving only empty space where they'd been a microsecond before. Then the drones returned fire. What happened next made Commander Tarvik question everything he knew about space combat. The Xinthian shields were rated to withstand Nova-level energy. They were the finest shields the galaxy had ever developed, impervious to anything short of a direct hit from a stellar body. The human weapons went right through them, not over them or around them. Through them. As if the shield simply didn't exist, Tarvik watched in horror as drone weapons struck his flagship's hull, his screen showing impacts that should have been impossible. "Shields are useless," his tactical officer screamed. "They're using some kind of phase-shifted energy. Our defenses can't even detect it." "How is that possible?" Tarvik demanded. "That technology shouldn't exist." But it did exist. Humans had invented it 8,000 years ago, during the darkest days of the war, when they'd needed weapons that could pierce any defense. They had put it to sleep along with everything else, hoping never to need it again. Now it tore through the Xinthian fleet like tissue paper. Ships began reporting damage. Not critical damage. The humans were being precise, targeting weapon systems, engines, communication arrays. They were disabling the fleet, not destroying it. But that precision was almost more terrifying than total destruction would have been. It meant the humans had such complete control over the battlefield that they could choose to let the Xinthians live. "All ships, activate emergency jump drives," Tarvik ordered. "We need to retreat." But when his ships tried to engage their faster-than-light drives, nothing happened. The engines powered up, space began to bend around them, and then nothing. They stayed exactly where they were. "Jump drives are being blocked," his engineer reported, voice shaking. "There's some kind of field preventing us from opening a warp tunnel. We're trapped." On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with no satisfaction. She took no joy in this. But she needed the Xinthians to understand what they were dealing with. She needed them to take a message back to the galaxy. "Deploy the tombstones," she ordered. "Let them see what we really built." In orbit, the 12 massive structures that had guarded Earth for 10,000 years finally showed their true purpose. They weren't monuments. They weren't archaeological mysteries. They were weapons platforms, each one containing enough firepower to sterilize a continent. But they didn't fire. Instead, they moved. They broke orbit with impossible grace for objects so large. They accelerated toward the Xinthian fleet with no visible engines, defying physics in ways that made the alien scientists watching go pale. And as they moved, they began to transform. Panels slid open. Weapon ports emerged, targeting arrays that could track 1,000 ships simultaneously locked onto the Xinthian vessels. Each tombstone aimed at a different section of the fleet, making it clear that if they fired, there would be nothing left but debris. Commander Tarvik stared at the display in disbelief. His fleet was surrounded by millions of drones. blocked from escaping, completely disarmed, and now threatened by weapons that dwarfed anything he'd ever seen. The entire engagement had lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes to completely neutralize the most powerful military force his species had ever assembled. A new transmission came through. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen again. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. "Commander Tarvik, your fleet is disabled but intact. Your crews are alive. I'm going to let one of your ships leave. Just one. You're going to take it back to the Galactic Council, and you're going to tell them exactly what happened here. Do you understand?" Tarvik could barely speak. You could have destroyed us all." "Yes," Chen said simply. "But we don't want to destroy you. We never wanted that. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted peace. Your government refused to give us that choice, so we took it by force. Now you have a choice. You can go back and tell them that humans are willing to coexist peacefully, or you can tell them we're the monsters they feared 10,000 years ago. Which message you deliver is up to you." She paused, letting that sink in. "But make sure they understand this. We disabled 200 of your finest ships in 17 minutes without suffering a single casualty. We used weapons your shields can't stop. We trapped your fleet in a system with technology you don't understand. And we barely tried. This wasn't our fleet at full strength. This wasn't our military operating at full capacity. This was a demonstration. A warning. Push us again and next time we won't be so gentle." Tarvik looked at his command crew. They all looked broken, terrified. These were soldiers who had thought themselves invincible. Now they knew better. "I understand," Tarvik said quietly. "I'll deliver your message." Chen nodded. "Your flagship has been released from our control. The rest of your fleet will remain here until the Galactic Council agrees to negotiate. Treat your crews well, Commander. They're guests now, not prisoners. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this." The transmission ended. Tarvik's flagship, now the only functioning ship in his entire fleet, slowly pulled away from the battlefield. Behind him, 199 disabled warships floated helplessly, surrounded by human drones that watched them like predators circling prey. As he prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Tarvik took one last look at the Sol system. The tombstones had returned to their orbits around Earth, resuming their silent vigil. The drones had vanished back into wherever they'd been hiding. The system looked peaceful again, almost welcoming. But Tarvik would never forget what he'd seen. The galaxy had thought the humans were gone. The galaxy had thought their weapons were obsolete. The galaxy had thought 10,000 years would make them weak. The galaxy had been terribly, terribly wrong. He jumped to FTL alone, carrying a message that would shake every species in the Council. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen watched him go. Around her, the command center was silent. Her crew waited to see what she would do next. "Stand down to alert status yellow," she finally said. "Keep the prisoners comfortable. Prepare diplomatic teams. And someone send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we're willing to talk. But make it clear that next time, if they send a fleet, we won't be so merciful." She turned to leave, then paused. "And wake up everyone else. All remaining humans. If we're going to rejoin the galaxy, we do it together. No more sleeping. No more hiding. We face whatever comes next with our eyes open." As she walked through the corridors back to the surface, Chen thought about the look on Tarvik's face. The disbelief, the fear, the realization that everything he'd believed about military superiority was wrong. She had seen that look before 10,000 years ago, on the faces of every species that had fought humanity during the war. It was the look of someone discovering that the universe was more dangerous than they'd imagined. The beast had given them a warning. Now it remained to be seen whether they were wise enough to listen. The footage of the Battle of Sol spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Commander Tarvik's ship had recorded everything, and when he arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters, the recordings were immediately broadcast to every member species. The reaction was panic. The council chambers erupted into chaos. Representatives from 847 species all tried to speak at once, their voices a cacophony of fear and anger. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic negotiations. A few of the older species, those with long memories, simply sat in stunned silence, their worst nightmares confirmed. Councillor Vector, who had pushed so hard for the mining operation, stood at his podium with his crystalline form dimmed with shame. "The humans used technology we thought impossible. Our intelligence agencies are analyzing the recordings now, but preliminary reports suggest they have at least a dozen weapon systems we have no counter for. Ambassador Tilith of the Ravian Collective rose slowly. I warned this council. I warned you that disturbing the humans would end badly. You voted to proceed anyway. Now we have 199 disabled warships and their crews being held hostage in Sol system. What do you propose we do about it? We assemble a larger fleet, said Warlord Craxus of the Crassian Dominion, a species that looked like armored bears and lived for combat. 200 ships failed. Send 2,000. Send 20,000. We cannot allow primitives to humiliate the galactic order. The elderly Morphean delegate, the one whose warnings had been laughed at before, spoke in a voice that commanded attention despite its softness. You speak of primitives, yet you saw what they did to our finest military force. I will tell you what our ancient records say about the humans. When they fought the First Galactic Union, the war lasted 300 years. In that time, 70 species combined their forces against them. Do you know how many of those 70 species still exist today? Silence fell across the chamber. 48, the Morphean continued. 22 species were rendered extinct by human weapons. Not conquered, not absorbed, extinct. Gone from the universe forever. The humans did not wage war to gain territory or resources. They waged war to survive. And when you threaten a human's survival, they do not stop until the threat is eliminated completely. Surely that was before they evolved. A younger species protested. They slept for 10,000 years to become more peaceful. They slept, the Morphean agreed, because they were too dangerous to remain awake. Because even they were frightened of what they had become. Now you have awakened them and you debate whether to send more ships to attack them. I ask you this. Do you want to discover if they kept their promise to become peaceful? Or do you want to discover what happens when you push them back into becoming what they were? The debate raged for hours. Species divided along philosophical lines. The warrior cultures wanted to fight, to prove that galactic civilization could not be intimidated. The merchant species wanted to negotiate, to find a peaceful solution that would restore trade and order. The scientific species wanted to study the humans, to understand their technology. But one thing became clear. The galaxy could not ignore what had happened. Humans were no longer a ghost story. They were real, they were awake, and they were more powerful than anyone had anticipated. Finally, a vote was called. Should the Council authorize a Grand Armada to force the humans into compliance, or should they attempt diplomatic negotiations? The vote was close, but the militarist won. 15 species committed their fleets to the cause, led by the Crassian Dominion, and supported by what remained of Vector's political faction. They assembled the largest military force in recorded galactic history. 50,000 warships, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, enough soldiers to conquer an empire. They called it the Grand Armada of Unity. They said it was about protecting galactic law and order. But everyone knew the truth. It was about fear. Fear that if humans could defeat 200 ships so easily, they might decide to wake up fully and take revenge for being disturbed. Better to crush them now, while they were still waking up, than to face them at full strength. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen received the news with a heavy heart. All across the Sol system, humans were still being revived. They now had 200 million people awake, but that was less than 1% of their total population. Most were still sleeping, still trapped in their pods, vulnerable. They're sending how many ships? Chen asked, staring at the intelligence report. 50,000, confirmed Admiral. Possibly more. They'll arrive in 6 days. Our analysts believe they're planning to overwhelm us with sheer numbers. Chen called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. These were the humans who had fought in the war 10,000 years ago, who understood the cost of conflict. They gathered in the command center, their faces grim. Options, Chen said simply. General Marcus Zhao, her tactical officer, pulled up a holographic display. We can win, even against 50,000 ships. Our weapons are still superior. Our AI is more sophisticated. Our strategies are more flexible, but, Chen prompted. But winning means revealing the full extent of our capabilities. Right now, the galaxy is scared, but they're not terrified. They think we used clever tricks to beat the Xinthian fleet. If we destroy 50,000 ships, if we demonstrate weapons that can eliminate entire fleets in minutes, they'll have only two choices: surrender completely or unite every species in the galaxy against us. All 847 of them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of human AI development, spoke up. The AIs have run the simulations. If we fight at full capacity, if we use everything we built during the war, we can probably defeat the entire galaxy. But the cost would be enormous. Billions dead on both sides. Entire species extinct. And we would become exactly what we feared 10,000 years ago. Monsters who win through overwhelming violence. Chen closed her eyes. This was the nightmare scenario they had tried to avoid by sleeping. They had hoped to wake up to a galaxy that had matured beyond needing to solve problems with warfare. Instead, they'd woken up to the same old patterns, the same old mistakes. What if we don't fight? She asked. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her. You're suggesting surrender? General Zhao asked carefully. No, I'm suggesting we give them what they want, or at least what they think they want. Chen's eyes opened, and there was a fierce intelligence in them. They're afraid of us. They want to prove they're stronger. They want to beat us in a fair fight so they can sleep soundly knowing the humans aren't a threat. So let's give them that fight. Explain, Dr. Tanaka said. We meet them in battle. We fight them with equal or slightly inferior numbers. We make it look like a real contest. We let them capture some of our ships. We let them think they're winning. And then, at the very end, we demonstrate just enough of our true capability to make them realize they should have accepted our offer for peace. That's incredibly dangerous, General Zhao said. If we pretend to be weaker than we are, we risk actually losing. No, Chen corrected. We risk people getting hurt. We risk losing ships. But we won't lose. The AIs will be controlling everything behind the scenes, making sure it looks like a real battle while never putting us in actual danger. We perform a play. We let them have their war, and when it's over, we offer them peace again from a position of strength they can't deny. A younger officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, spoke up hesitantly. Admiral, isn't that manipulative? Aren't we just playing games with their lives? Chen looked at her kindly. Yes, it's manipulative. It's also the most humane option we have. Option 1, we crush them utterly and make the galaxy hate us out of fear. Option 2, we surrender and let them believe they can push us around whenever they want, which will lead to future conflicts. Option 3, we show them they can't beat us, but we make it close enough that they feel like they put up a good fight. They save face, we stay safe, and maybe, just maybe, they're willing to talk peace afterward. The debate continued for hours, but eventually Chen's plan was accepted. It was risky, it was complex, and it required split-second timing, but it was the best chance they had to end this without genocide. 6 days later, the Grand Armada arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Warlord Craxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Unstoppable Pride. Around him stretched 50,000 warships from 15 different species. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing he had ever seen. The humans have deployed a defensive fleet, his sensor officer reported. Approximately 5,000 ships. They're holding position near the orbit of Jupiter. 5,000 ships against 50,000. Craxus smiled, showing his enormous fangs. They're either very brave or very foolish. All ships advance at battle speed. When we're in range, we hit them with everything. Show them what true military might looks like. The Grand Armada moved forward like a wall of destruction. As they approached, the human fleet began to spread out, forming a defensive perimeter. The human ships were sleek and dark, difficult to see against the black of space. They moved with precision, every vessel exactly where it needed to be. Admiral Chen is commanding their fleet personally, intelligence reported. She's on the flagship designated Freedom's Hope. Good, Craxus said. I want her to see her defeat clearly. The two fleets closed to weapons range. For a moment, space was silent, both sides preparing for the storm to come. Then Craxus gave the order. All ships, fire! The Grand Armada opened up with everything they had. 50,000 ships' worth of energy weapons lit up the darkness like a new sun being born. Missiles streaked through the void by the millions. Kinetic weapons accelerated to near light speed. It was enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. The human fleet returned fire. What followed was the largest space battle in 3,000 years. Ships exploded on both sides. Debris filled the space between Jupiter and Saturn. Energy shields flared and collapsed. Hull plating melted under concentrated fire. It was chaos, it was beautiful, and it was absolutely terrifying. But something was strange. The humans were fighting well, better than well, But they weren't using the same weapons they'd used against the Xinthian fleet. Their shields were working conventionally. Their weapons were powerful but not impossible to defend against. They were fighting like a normal military force. Craxus watched the battle unfold with growing satisfaction. The humans were good, he had to admit that. They were skilled tacticians, their pilots were excellent, and their coordination was impressive. But they were losing. Slowly but surely, the weight of numbers was crushing them. "They're falling back toward Mars," his tactical officer reported. "They've lost approximately 1,000 ships. We've lost 1,500, but we can afford the exchange rate. Press the advantage," Craxus ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The battle raged for 12 hours. The human fleet fought with desperation, protecting their homeworld with everything they had. They used clever tactics, ambushes, feints. They made the Grand Armada pay for every light second of space they conquered. But it wasn't enough. Finally, with the human fleet down to less than 2,000 ships and the Grand Armada still boasting 40,000, Admiral Chen's face appeared on every screen in the enemy fleet. She looked exhausted. There was blood on her uniform. The bridge behind her showed damage, sparking consoles and injured crew members. But her eyes were still fierce. "Warlord Craxus," she said, "you've won. Your fleet is superior. You've proven your point. I'm offering surrender before more lives are lost on both sides." Craxus felt triumph surge through him. They had done it. They had beaten the legendary humans in open combat. The galaxy would remember this day forever. "I accept your surrender," he began. And then Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I'm not offering surrender because we're losing, Warlord Craxus," Admiral Chen said, that terrible smile still on her face. "I'm offering surrender because I'm hoping you're smart enough to accept it." Craxus felt confusion cut through his triumph. "What are you talking about? Your fleet is destroyed. You have no leverage." "No leverage?" Chen's smile widened. "Tell me, Warlord, did you really think the battle you just fought was our full capability? Did you truly believe that we used our best weapons against the Xinthian fleet, but somehow forgot to use them against you?" A cold feeling began to spread through Craxus's chest. Around him, his bridge crew started looking at their sensor displays with growing concern. "The battle you just won," Chen continued, "was a performance, a demonstration. We wanted to see if you could be satisfied with a conventional victory, if you could take your win and go home. But I can see from your expression that you won't accept peace even now. You want total domination. You want us gone." She leaned forward and her eyes were as cold as the void. "So let me show you what would have happened if we had actually been trying." The sensor officer on Craxus's bridge suddenly screamed. "New contacts. Thousands of them. Hundreds of thousands. They're everywhere." The holographic display exploded with red threat markers. They appeared from behind every moon, every asteroid, every planet in the system. What they had thought was empty space revealed itself to be filled with weapons platforms, stealth ships and drone swarms so dense they looked like clouds. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the tombstones, all 12 of them, had left Earth's orbit and now hung in space, directly in the path of the Grand Armada. They had transformed completely, their surfaces opening up to reveal weapon systems that made Craxus's flagship look like a child's toy. Each tombstone was larger than his entire command carrier, and they were pointed directly at his fleet. "This is what we really built during the war," Chen said softly. "The fleet you just fought? Those were our outdated ships. Training vessels. The ones we use for practice. The real military, the actual human defense force, has been watching you this entire time." The display showed more ships decloaking. These were different from the ones Craxus had been fighting. Sleeker, darker, more advanced. They moved with unnatural grace, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. There were millions of them, and they surrounded the Grand Armada completely. "You came here with 50,000 ships," Chen continued. "That's impressive. Formidable. The largest fleet assembled in galactic history. Congratulations. Humanity has 3 million warships in the Sol system alone. We have another 7 million scattered across hidden bases throughout this region of space. We have weapons that can phase through your shields, weapons that can hack your computers, weapons that can create temporary black holes, weapons that can make your stars go supernova. We have AI that can predict your every move before you make it. We have soldiers who have been training for war their entire lives." She paused, letting that sink in. "We didn't use any of that against you, because we were trying to be merciful. We were trying to give you a victory you could be proud of. We were hoping that if you thought you'd beaten us in a fair fight, you might be willing to talk peace. Craxus found his voice. You were letting us win? Every single step of the way, Chen confirmed. The ships you destroyed were remotely piloted. No human casualties. The damage to my bridge, stage makeup. The blood on my uniform, fake. The desperation in my voice, acting. I'm actually quite proud of my performance. But now I need you to understand something very important. The tombstones began to glow with power that made space itself distort. The new fleet of human ships locked weapons on every single vessel in the Grand Armada. Millions of drones surrounded them in a sphere of potential destruction so dense that escape was impossible. You can surrender right now, Chen said, and we will let you go home. Every ship, every crew member unharmed, or you can continue this fight and we will show you what a real war with humanity looks like. We will disable every ship in your fleet in less than 10 minutes. We will do it without killing a single person if we can help it, because we're not monsters. But you will go home in disabled vessels, towed by human ships, and the entire galaxy will watch footage of what we can actually do when we stop pretending. She leaned back. The choice is yours. But understand this. We have been awake for less than 2 weeks. Less than 1% of our population is conscious. 99% of humanity is still asleep. You are fighting the skeleton crew of a civilization that hasn't even fully woken up yet. Do you really want to see what happens when we wake everyone up? Do you really want to push us that far? The bridge of Craxus's ship was silent except for the sound of breathing and the quiet beeping of sensors. His crew looked to him for guidance. He was their warlord, their leader, the one who never backed down from a fight. But he was also smart enough to recognize when he was beaten. How do I know you're not bluffing? He asked, but his voice had lost its certainty. Chen nodded to someone off screen. Give them a demonstration. Target area designated Theta 7. Fire one tombstone at minimal power. In space, one of the 12 massive structures rotated slightly, aiming at a specific point in the asteroid belt far from both fleets. There was a moment of charging, energy building to visible levels. Then a beam of pure white light shot out from the tombstone. It traveled at the speed of light, which meant it hit its target instantly. The asteroid it hit, a rocky body the size of a small mountain, simply ceased to exist. It didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It vanished, converted to energy and scattered atoms in a microsecond. That was approximately 1/1,000,000th of that tombstone's actual power, Chen said calmly. At full power, one tombstone can destroy a planet the size of Earth. We have 12 of them. And that's just our defensive platforms. I'm not going to show you what our actual fleet weapons can do because I don't want to give you nightmares. But trust me when I say you cannot win this fight. Craxus looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. Fear in something else. Relief, maybe. Relief that someone was giving them a way out of a battle they couldn't win. What guarantee do I have that you'll let us leave? He asked. The same guarantee I gave Commander Tarvik, Chen replied. My word, humans don't lie about things like this. If we wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. We're offering you peace because we meant what we said 10,000 years ago. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to fight wars. We just want to exist in peace. But we will not be pushed around. We will not be invaded. We will not allow our homeworld to be strip-mined. We will defend ourselves, and we are very, very good at defense. Craxus made his decision. All ships stand down. Power down weapons. We accept the human offer of peace. Around him, his officers looked relieved. The entire Grand Armada began powering down their weapon systems, their shields dropping, their ships going into passive mode. Chen nodded approvingly. Smart choice, Warlord. You just saved millions of lives. Here's what's going to happen next. Our ships will escort your fleet to the edge of the system. We'll return your disabled ships from the first battle. You'll go back to the Galactic Council and you'll tell them exactly what happened here. Every detail. Don't leave anything out. And then we negotiate. Real negotiations. Between equals. We want a seat on the Galactic Council. We want recognition of Sol system sovereignty. We want reparations for the damage to our homeworld. And in exchange, we'll share some of our technology, medical advances, energy solutions, things that can help the galaxy. We're not your enemy unless you make us your enemy. Craxus nodded slowly. I'll deliver your message. I know you will, Chen said. Her expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Warlord, you fought well. Your tactics were solid, your crews were brave. In a fair fight against any other species, you would have won easily. You just picked the wrong species to fight. The transmission ended. Craxus sat back in his command chair, feeling exhausted. Around him, his crew began the process of organizing the retreat. The human ships, those sleek dark vessels that had been hiding all along, began guiding the Grand Armada toward the edge of the system. It took 3 days to make the journey. During that time, the humans were courteous hosts. They provided supplies to ships that needed them. They helped with repairs on vessels that had been damaged in the battle. They treated the defeated fleet with respect, not mockery. When they finally reached the edge of the system, Admiral Chen contacted Craxus one final time. "Safe travels, Warlord. Tell the Council we'll expect their diplomatic team within the month."
"Oh, and one more thing."
She smiled, and this time it was warm, genuine. "Welcome to the new galaxy. It's big enough for all of us." The Grand Armada jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared, carrying 50,000 ships full of soldiers who would never forget what they'd seen in Sol System. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen addressed her people. Not just the 200 million who were awake, but all of humanity, because the message was being recorded for those still sleeping. "My fellow humans," she began, standing on the surface of Earth for the first time since waking. The sky above her was blue and beautiful. The sun was warm on her face. "The crisis is over. We've been tested twice now. Both times we've chosen the difficult path of restraint over the easy path of overwhelming violence. Both times we've tried to be the species we promised we would become." She paused, looking at the camera. "I won't lie to you. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to unleash everything we had, to show the galaxy exactly what we're capable of, to make them so afraid they would never dare threaten us again. But that's not who we are anymore. That's not who we chose to be." Around her, humans who had fought in the battles, who had played their parts in the deception, nodded in agreement. They had been terrified that they would have to become monsters again. They were grateful they hadn't needed to. "The Galactic Council will negotiate with us now," Chen continued. "They'll give us what we deserve: respect, sovereignty, equality. Not because they love us, but because they fear us. That fear will keep us safe while we prove that we're not the monsters they remember. Over time, maybe we can build trust. Maybe we can build real friendships with other species. But that will take time. It will take patience. It will take us continuing to choose peace over and over again, even when violence would be easier." She smiled. "We slept for 10,000 years waiting for a galaxy that was ready for us. We woke up to find it wasn't quite ready yet. But that's okay. We're not the same humans who went to sleep. But we're not so different from the humans who fought the war either. We're something in between. We're a species that knows how to fight but chooses peace. We're a species that has unimaginable power but uses restraint. We're a species that could rule the galaxy but would rather be its partner." She raised her hand in salute. "To everyone still sleeping, when you wake up, you'll wake to a galaxy that knows we're here, that respects us, and that will give us the chance to prove we've changed. Let's not waste that chance. Let's be the humans our ancestors hoped we would become." The transmission ended. Across the Sol System, humans began the long work of integrating with a galaxy that had forgotten them. Diplomatic teams were assembled. Cultural exchange programs were planned. Scientists prepared to share their knowledge. But the military remained active. The tombstones returned to their orbits but stayed charged. The fleets remained deployed but on standby. The weapon system stayed online but dormant. Because humanity had learned a lesson 10,000 years ago, and they had just had it reinforced. Peace only works when backed by the capability for war. Kindness only matters when you could choose to be cruel. Mercy only has meaning when you have the power to destroy. The beast had been sleeping. They had woken it up. It had shown them its teeth, reminded them why they should be afraid, and then chosen not to bite. Now it would sleep again, but with one eye open, always watching, always ready, always hoping it would never need to fully wake. Because deep in the human archives, in files that were sealed and secured, there were other protocols, other weapons, other capabilities that hadn't been revealed. Protocols with names like Exodus, Apocalypse, and Final Solution. Weapons that could make the tombstones look primitive. Technologies that could reshape reality itself. Humanity had shown the galaxy maybe 10% of what they could do. They hoped it would be enough. They prayed they would never need to show more. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in her quarters that night looking at the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, The Galactic Council was arguing about what to do about humanity. Other species were making decisions that would affect the future. But Chen was thinking about the people still sleeping. The billions of humans who would wake up in the coming months and years. What kind of galaxy would they wake up to? Would it be one where humanity was accepted? Or one where they were feared? Would they find friends among the stars, or would they find only enemies? She thought about the choices she'd made, the battles she'd fought, the mercy she'd shown. Had she done the right thing? Only time would tell. Behind her, a notification appeared on her screen. A message from the Galactic Council. They wanted to begin negotiations immediately. They were offering everything humanity had asked for. A council seat, sovereignty, reparations, recognition. Chen smiled. It was a start. Just a start, but a start was all they needed. The beast would sleep, but it would sleep knowing it was respected, knowing it was safe, knowing it had earned the right to exist in peace. And if anyone ever forgot that lesson, if anyone ever pushed too far again, well, the beast knew how to wake up. It just hoped it would never have to. As the twin suns of Vestara set, Chintor stood alone on the observation deck of the black ship. His weathered hands gripped the cold metal railing as he watched the burning sky fade to darkness. The larger sun, a fierce orange giant, dipped below, the horizon first. The smaller blue dwarf followed, painting the alien sky in shades of purple and red before darkness took over. 300 cycles had passed since humanity's first contact with the collective. 200 since the war began. Chintor closed his eyes, feeling the gentle hum of the ship beneath his feet. Once, the black ship had been the pride of Earth's fleet, a monument to human ingenuity and determination. Now it carried the last survivors of Earth's defense force, running on borrowed time and dwindling hope. Commander Chintor, came a smooth, artificial voice from the ceiling speakers. Captain Mira requests your presence on the bridge. Tell her I'll be there shortly, Vex, Chintor replied to the ship's AI. He allowed himself a few more moments of quiet reflection. At 56, Chintor was older than most active crew members. His dark hair had long since given way to gray, and deep lines marked a face that had seen too much loss. He wore the standard black uniform of the fleet, though the insignia on his shoulder, a golden earth surrounded by stars, now represented a planet that existed only in memory. The observation deck was his refuge. Here, among the stars, he could remember Earth as it was. Blue skies, vast oceans, and the small farmhouse where his grandmother had raised him after his parents died in the first wave of the collective's attack. Commander? Vex spoke again. Captain Mira is becoming impatient. Chintor sighed. On my way. As he turned from the viewport, memories flooded back unbidden. The fall of Mars Colony, where his wife had been stationed. The destruction of Saturn's rings to deny the collective. A staging area. The faces of crew members lost along the way. Each death added weight to his shoulders, a burden he carried in silence. The corridors of the black ship were dimly lit to conserve power. Most of the crew had retired to their quarters, leaving the passageways empty and quiet. Chintor's footsteps echoed against metal floors as he made his way to the bridge, nodding to the occasional crew member who saluted as he passed. The bridge door slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Mira stood at the central console, her tall figure outlined by the glow of holographic star charts. Though only 32, responsibility had aged her beyond her years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she rarely smiled these days. You wanted to see me, Captain? Chintor asked, stepping onto the bridge. Mira turned, her sharp eyes meeting his. We're approaching the coordinates. I wanted you here. When we arrive. The coordinates. For months they had been following ancient star maps recovered from Earth's deepest archives. Maps that suggested a potential ally against the collective might be found in this remote sector of space. Most of the crew believed this mission to be suicide, a fool's errand based on myths and legends. But options were few, and extinction loomed. Navigation reports will reach the boundary in 47 minutes, said Lieutenant K from her station. The young officer's fingers danced across her console as she made minor course corrections. And the collective? Chintor asked. No signs. "Of pursuit," answered Officer Reed, the ship's tactical specialist. His young face looked haggard from too many sleepless nights. "But this sector is unmapped. Our sensors are limited." Centaur moved to stand beside Mira, studying the star charts. The region ahead appeared empty. No planets, no stations, nothing but open space. Yet according to the ancient maps, something waited for them there. "Captain," Centaur said quietly, so only she could hear. "The crew deserves to know what we're looking for." Mira's jaw tightened. "They know enough. We're searching for allies. They deserve more than that. They deserve the truth." "The truth?" Mira's voice held a bitter edge. "That we're chasing a story told by your grandmother? A children's tale about ancient beings who might help us. How will that help morale?" Centaur held her gaze. "It's more than a story." Before Mira could respond, Vex's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, detecting unusual energy readings ahead." All eyes turned to the main view screen as it displayed a swirling cloud of cosmic dust and gas, a nebula that hadn't appeared on any of their charts. "Full stop," Mira ordered. "Read analysis." Reed frowned at his readings. "The nebula is generating some kind of interference. Our long-range scanners can't penetrate it." "Is it natural?" Centaur asked. Reed hesitated. "I don't think so, sir. The energy pattern is too regular, too structured. Almost like..." "Like what, officer?" Mira pressed. "Like it's designed to hide something." Silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. Centaur felt a strange sensation in his chest. Not fear, but recognition. Somewhere deep in his memories, in stories passed down through generations, he'd heard of this place. "The Veil," he whispered. Mira looked at him sharply. "What did you say?" "My grandmother called it the Veil, a curtain of stars hiding those who retreated from the galaxy when the collective first appeared." "Your grandmother again," Mira said, but her voice held less skepticism now. "How would she know about this place?" Centaur had asked himself that question many times. His grandmother, with her strange eyes that sometimes caught the light in unusual ways, had told him stories that no other children heard. Stories of beings who had once walked among humans before returning to the stars. At the time, he'd thought, they were just tales to help a young boy cope with the loss of his parents. Now he wasn't so sure. "Captain," Reed called out, his voice tight with urgency. "Something's happening." The nebula before them pulsed, rings of energy spreading outward like ripples in a pond. The black ship shuddered as the first wave hit them. "Shields holding," Kay reported. "But our systems are experiencing interference." "Weapons online," Mira ordered. "Prepare for..." "No," Centaur interrupted, moving toward the view screen. "Don't raise weapons. They're scanning us." "They?" Mira demanded. "Who is they, Commander?" Centaur didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the nebula as it shifted, parts of it becoming transparent, revealing what looked like a corridor of clear space. An invitation. "Sir," Reed said, looking at his console in disbelief, "the nebula is opening for us." Centaur felt it then, a stirring in his blood, a call he couldn't explain. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "When the skies burn and hope seems lost, follow the path between stars. They remember the children of Earth. They wait for one who carries the mark." He turned to Mira, certainty filling him for the first time in years. "Captain, we need to proceed. This is what we've been searching for." Mira studied him, conflict clear in her eyes. As captain, her duty was to protect what remained of humanity aboard this ship. As a soldier who had watched the collective systematically destroy human colonies across the galaxy, she knew they needed a miracle. "You're certain?" she asked. Centaur nodded. "As certain as I've ever been about anything." After a long moment, Mira made her decision. "Lieutenant K, take us in. Slow approach. Reed, keep shields up but weapons powered down." The black ship moved forward, entering the corridor of clear space within the nebula. As they passed through, the crew watched in awe as the cosmic dust closed behind them, sealing them in. Centaur felt a weight lift from his shoulders. After all the running, All the hiding, all the desperate last stands and narrow escapes, they had finally found what they were looking for. Or rather, they had been found. Commander. Vex's artificial voice sounded different somehow, almost reverent. I'm detecting a transmission. It's unlike anything in my databases. Put it through, Chintor said. No sound came through the speakers. Instead, Chintor felt a presence in his mind. Gentle, curious, ancient. Words formed not in his ears, but in his thoughts. Welcome home, child of Earth. We have waited a long time for your return. Chintor smiled, tears forming in his eyes. His grandmother had been right all along. The journey had only just begun. Deep within the bowels of the black ship, Engineer Reed wiped sweat from his brow as he crawled through a narrow maintenance tunnel. The air was hot and stale, tasting of metal and ozone. His hands moved quickly over the exposed circuitry of the cloaking system, making adjustments that might mean the difference between survival and destruction. Reed, status report. Captain Mira's voice crackled through his comm unit. Almost there, Captain, he replied, connecting two fiber optic cables with practice precision. The cloaking system is at 70% efficiency. That's the best I can do with what we have. There was a pause before Mira responded. It will have to be enough. We're about to implement Ghost Protocol. You have 5 minutes to get to your station. Reed swallowed hard. Ghost Protocol was a desperate measure, a complete power reduction where all non-essential systems were shut down to avoid detection. It was dangerous, leaving the ship vulnerable, but it might be their only chance to survive this deep in collective territory. Understood, Captain. Reed out. As he gathered his tools, Reed's thoughts turned to the strange nebula they had entered 12 hours ago. The corridor of clear space had led them deeper and deeper, twisting through the cosmic dust like a path, designed by some intelligent mind. No one knew what waited at the end except perhaps Commander Chintor, who had been unusually quiet since they entered. Reed made his way back to engineering, passing nervous crew members preparing for Ghost Protocol. The black ship had been running for so long that fear had become their constant companion, as familiar as the hum of the engines or the recycled air they breathed. In engineering, Chief Engineer Thomas barked orders as his team secured equipment and powered down non-critical systems. At 45, Thomas was one of the few crew members older than Reed, with hands calloused from decades of keeping ships flying against all odds. There you are, Thomas said as Reed entered. I need you on the coolant system. When we power down the main engines, we'll have about 30 seconds before the backup cooling fails. You'll have to manually regulate it until we're clear. Reed nodded, taking his position at the control panel. Around him, the usual bright lights of engineering dimmed as system after system went dark. The familiar hum of the engines quieted to a whisper. Attention all crew. Captain Mira's voice came through the emergency channel. Ghost Protocol initiating in 3, 2, 1. The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting cast a dim red glow over the room as the ship seemed to hold its breath. Reed's fingers hovered over his controls, waiting for the telltale spike in temperature that would signal his moment to act. Meanwhile, several decks above, Commander Chintor moved through the darkened corridors with purpose. Instead of heading to the bridge where he should have been during Ghost Protocol, he made his way to a section of the ship few knew existed, the archive chamber. The black ship had been built in the final days before Earth fell, designed not just as a warship, but as a vessel to preserve humanity's knowledge and history. Hidden behind ordinary bulkheads lay rooms filled with data crystals containing everything from ancient literature to cutting-edge research, protected by security protocols known only to a select few. Chintor placed his palm against a seemingly ordinary section of wall. A hidden scanner read his biometrics and a door silently slid open, revealing a small circular room. As he stepped inside, soft blue lights activated automatically, running on a power system separate from the main grid. Identify, came a computerized voice different from Vex's. Commander Eli Chintor, authorization Omega 73 Delta. Voice pattern and authorization confirmed. Welcome, Commander. The center of the room held a cylindrical pillar containing thousands of data crystals, each no larger than a fingernail. Chintor approached it, his fingers dancing across a control panel with practiced ease. The cylinder rotated, crystals shifting position, until a single red crystal moved forward. Chintor removed it carefully, as if handling something infinitely precious. In a way, it was. This crystal contained his grandmother's personal logs, recorded before her death 20 years ago. He'd never accessed them before, feeling it would be an invasion of her privacy. But now, as the black ship journeyed deeper into the unknown, he needed answers only she might provide. He inserted the crystal into a reader, and a holographic display flickered to life. His grandmother's face appeared, older than he remembered, her, with the same strange eyes that sometimes caught the light in unusual ways. Eli, the recording began, using his first name, a name he rarely used anymore. If you're watching this, then you found the path I always knew you would. I've kept secrets from you, secrets about your heritage, about who you really are. Chintor's heart raced as he listened. I was not born on Earth, his grandmother continued, her voice steady despite the weight of her confession. I came there as an emissary, a bridge between two worlds. Your grandfather was human, but I was not entirely. I am what the ancient texts call a halfling, created to understand humanity from within. Chintor sank into a nearby chair, his legs suddenly weak. The stories she had told him as a child, tales of star travelers and ancient guardians, hadn't been fairy tales after all. They had been her trying to prepare him in her own way for the truth. The beings who helped create me are called many names across the galaxy. Some call them the architects, others the first ones. They watched over humanity for millennia, guiding your evolution from afar. When the collective emerged and began their campaign of absorption, the architects retreated to the spaces between stars, hidden behind veils of cosmic dust. She leaned closer to the recording device, her eyes intense. But they left a key, Eli. They modified certain bloodlines to carry genetic markers, patterns in DNA that would activate when the time was right. You carry that marker. You are not just delivering a message to them, you are the message. The recording continued, explaining how the genetic modifications would begin to manifest as he approached the architect's sanctuary. Chintor thought of the strange sensations he'd been experiencing since they entered the nebula, heightened awareness, unusual clarity of thought, and the voice he'd heard in his mind. Your body will change, his grandmother said, as if reading his thoughts across time. Do not fear it. It is your heritage awakening, preparing you for what comes next. The architects will recognize you as one of their children, and through you, they might choose to help humanity once more. The recording ended with her final words. Remember, Eli, whatever you become, whatever choices lie ahead, you are still human where it matters most. In your heart. The holograph faded, leaving Chintor alone with revelations that shook the foundations of his identity. He was not fully human. His grandmother had been a hybrid, an emissary from an ancient race that had helped shape humanity's destiny. Suddenly, the ship lurched, throwing Chintor from his chair. The emergency lighting flickered as the vessel shuddered again. All hands to battle stations, Captain Mira's voice came through the emergency channel, tense with urgency. Ghost protocol has been compromised. We've been detected. Chintor quickly removed the data crystal and concealed it in a pocket. As he raced toward the bridge, his mind processed everything he had learned. The genetic marker, the changes beginning within him. They were real, not imagination or stress, as he'd tried to convince himself. He arrived on the bridge to find controlled chaos. Officers moved with practiced efficiency despite the fear evident in their eyes. On the main view screen, a horrifying sight greeted him. 3 collective vessels had appeared at the edge of the nebula, their massive forms like predatory shadows against the cosmic dust. They found us, Mira said as he took his place beside her. The nebula's interference masked their approach until they were nearly on top of us. Chintor studied the enemy ships. The collective vessels were unlike human designs, organic and mechanical merged into something that defied conventional engineering. Their hulls rippled like living tissue, weapons protruding like thorns from a twisted branch. "Options?" he asked, his voice steady despite the revelation still echoing in his mind. "We can't outrun them," Mira replied. "Not in this nebula. We can't outgun them either." "Then we keep going," Tintor said, a new certainty filling him. "Deeper into the nebula. The path is still open ahead of us." Mira looked at him, searching his face. "What do you know that you're not telling me, Commander?" Before Tintor could answer, Lieutenant K called out from her station. "Captain, something's happening to the nebula." All eyes turned to the view screen as the cosmic dust between the black ship and the collective vessels began to swirl, forming a dense wall that blocked their pursuers from view. "The nebula is protecting us," Reed said in disbelief from his tactical station. Tintor felt it then, a presence in his mind, stronger now, guiding him. Without thinking, he stepped forward and placed his hands on the navigation console. "Commander, what are you doing?" Mira demanded, but Tintor didn't answer. His fingers moved across the controls with impossible precision, inputting coordinates. He couldn't possibly know. His eyes reflected an otherworldly light as the ship responded to his commands, accelerating along a new course, deeper into the heart of the nebula, toward whatever destiny awaited them there. Behind them, hidden by the wall of cosmic dust, the collective vessels fired blindly, their weapons unable to find their target. The black ship slipped away, guided by a man who was beginning to understand that he was more than human, and less than human, all at once. The journey continued. The black ship drifted through what the crew now called the Silent Nebula. For 3 days they had journeyed deeper into the cosmic cloud, following a path that seemed to form ahead of them and close behind. The usual background noise of space, radiation, signals, stellar chatter, and the distant echoes of civilizations had gone completely silent, as if this region existed in its own pocket of reality. In the tactical room, Commander Tintor stood before a 3-dimensional map of their journey, watching as Lieutenant K added their latest position. The holographic display showed their winding path through the nebula, a trail of blue dots marking each day's progress toward coordinates that seemed to lead nowhere. "Still nothing on long-range scanners," Kay reported, her voice tight with frustration. "This nebula blocks everything." Across the table, Commander Vance slammed his fist down. "We're flying blind into enemy territory, following ghost stories and fairy tales." He glared at Tintor. "With all due respect, sir, this mission was questionable from the start. Now it's become a suicide run." Vance was head of security, a position that made paranoia a professional requirement. At 40, he had survived 3 major battles against the collective by always expecting the worst. His left eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant after a close encounter with collective forces on Europa, giving his face an asymmetrical appearance that matched his blunt personality. "We've avoided the collective for 3 days," Tintor replied calmly. "The nebula is protecting us." "Protecting us?" Vance scoffed. "Or hurting us? This could all be a trap." Dr. Aaliyah, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. "I agree with Commander Vance." As the ship's lead scientist, Aaliyah's opinion carried weight. Her dark eyes held a sharpness that missed nothing, and her reputation for caution was well earned. "The radiation signatures ahead match nothing in our databases. We're heading toward something unknown, potentially hostile." "Everything unknown isn't automatically hostile," Tintor argued. "In my experience," Vance countered, "it usually is." Captain Mira, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. All eyes turned to her as she approached the holographic display. "We've come too far to turn back," she said, studying the map. "And even if we wanted to, I'm not convinced we could find our way out. This nebula shifts and changes. Our path back may no longer exist. So we're trapped," Vance muttered. "Or guided," Tintor offered. Mira gave him a careful look. She had noticed the changes in him over the past 3 days, subtle differences in how he carried himself, how his eyes sometimes reflected light oddly, how he seemed to know things he shouldn't about their course. She hadn't confronted him yet, but her questioning glances told him she soon would. "What's your recommendation, Commander?" she asked, giving him a chance to share whatever he knew. Shintor hesitated. How could he explain what was happening to him? The dreams that plagued his sleep, visions of crystal cities and beings of light communicating in mathematical patterns. The growing awareness that stretched beyond his physical form, allowing him to sense the nebula's currents and flow, the knowledge that emerged in his mind without explanation, as if memories long dormant were awakening. "We continue forward," he finally said. "Whatever's waiting for us, we need to find it." Before Mira could respond, the tactical room door slid open and Chief Engineer Thomas rushed in, his face pale. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, breathing hard as if he'd run all the way. "Something's happening to the ship." They followed him to engineering, where a crowd of crew members had gathered around a section of the outer hull. Normally solid metal, the wall now rippled with faint patterns of light that moved like water. Engineer Reed stood nearby, scanning the phenomenon with a handheld device. "It started about 20 minutes ago," Reed explained as they approached. "The effect is spreading throughout the ship. It's not damaging anything, just changing it somehow." Dr. Aaliyah pushed forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. She reached out a hand toward the rippling metal, stopping just short of touching it. "Incredible," she whispered. "The molecular structure is being altered at the quantum level. But how?" She turned to look at Chintor, her eyes widening as she saw his face. Following her gaze, the others turned as well. Chintor's skin had developed the same subtle luminescence as the hull, faint patterns of light moving beneath the surface. He hadn't noticed it himself, but now he could feel it. A warmth spreading through his body, a sensation of connection to the ship and the nebula beyond. "Commander," Mira said carefully, "I think you need to tell us what's happening to you." The crew backed away from him, fear and confusion on their faces. Only Reed stepped closer, his scanner now pointed at Chintor. "The readings are similar," Reed confirmed. "Whatever's affecting the ship is affecting Commander Chintor too. Or maybe it's the other way around." "I can explain," Chintor began, but a sudden pain shot through his head, doubling him over. Visions flashed before his eyes, not memories this time, but real-time images of something massive approaching through the nebula. "We need to get to the bridge," he gasped. "Now." Despite their fear, years of discipline kicked in. Captain Mira ordered most of the crew back to their stations, while she, Vance, Aaliyah, and Reed followed Chintor to the bridge. As they moved through the corridors, the light patterns on Chintor's skin grew brighter, casting an eerie glow. They reached the bridge just as a massive energy spike erupted from the nebula's heart. The ship's systems faltered, lights flickering and control panels going dark before emergency power kicked in. "Report," Mira called out, taking her position at the command chair. "Massive energy surge, origin unknown," the sensor officer replied, fingers flying over his console. "It's not like anything we've encountered before, not collective, not human." On the main view screen, the nebula ahead began to part, revealing a vast, empty space beyond, a bubble of clear vacuum in the heart of the cosmic cloud. As the black ship entered this space, what awaited them stole the breath from every person on the bridge. 7 massive structures hung suspended in the void, arranged in a perfect heptagon. They weren't ships, but something between machine and organism, pulsing with blue-white energy that matched the patterns now flowing across Chintor's skin and the ship's hull. Each structure was the size of a small moon, shaped like geometric crystals with impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to both absorb and emit light. Panic spread through the crew. Some reached for weapons, others froze in their seats. Captain Mira remained outwardly calm, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the arms of her chair. "Are they scanning us?" she asked. "No, Captain," Reed answered, checking his readings. "They're waiting." As if in a trance, Chintor walked toward the navigation console. The officer stationed there moved aside without being asked, something in Chintor's expression making it clear he should not be stopped. "Commander, what are you doing?" Mira demanded, rising from her chair. Centaur didn't answer. His eyes now glowed with the same blue-white light as the structures. His hands moved across the controls with impossible precision, guiding the ship toward the center of the heptagon. "Stop him!" Vance shouted, drawing his sidearm. Dr. Aaliyah stepped between them. "Wait, look at the readings!" On her tablet, data streamed across the screen. Centaur's vital signs, brain activity, and genetic structure, all changing before their eyes. His DNA was restructuring itself, becoming more complex, more ordered. "The modifications in his DNA are activating," she said in awe. "He's evolving." "Into what?" Mira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. None of them had an answer. All they could do was watch as the black ship, guided by Centaur's transformed consciousness, moved into position at the exact center of the 7 structures. As they reached the midpoint, all 7 ancient constructs pulsed in unison, sending waves of energy washing over the ship. Rather than damaging them, the energy seemed to flow through the vessel like a cleansing tide. Systems that had been failing for months suddenly operated at peak efficiency. Hull breaches sealed themselves. Even the air felt fresher, cleaner. And in the midst of it all stood Centaur, a bridge between humanity and whatever ancient power had created this sanctuary. Through flashes of ancestral memory, images and knowledge passed down through his grandmother's modified genes, he began to understand. The beings that humans would call the architects had watched over Earth for millennia. They had visited in humanity's infancy, leaving subtle genetic changes that would flower into intelligence, creativity, and an insatiable curiosity about the stars. When the collective emerged and began absorbing or destroying all other life in the galaxy, the architects retreated to this hidden realm. But they left behind seeds, humans with special genetic markers, including Centaur's grandmother. Hybrids, who could serve as messengers when the time was right. As this knowledge filled him, Centaur finally understood the tragic truth. The collective wasn't hunting humanity out of hatred or for resources. They were eliminating humans out of fear. Fear of what humanity was designed to become by these ancient beings whom the collective called the bringers of change. In that moment of clarity, standing on the bridge with the crew watching in fearful awe, Centaur felt his consciousness expand beyond his physical form. He sensed the architects' presence, their attention focused on this small ship and its desperate crew, the last free remnants of a species they had helped create ages ago. A question formed in his expanded mind, one he directed toward the ancient beings whose structures surrounded them. "Will you help us?" The answer came not in words but in a flood of images and emotions, compassion mixed with caution, hope tempered by ancient wisdom. The architects had been waiting for this moment, for one who carried their mark to return. But their help would come at a price, and the choice ahead would test humanity's definition of survival itself. As Centaur's awareness returned to the bridge, he found Captain Mira standing before him, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. "What happened?" she asked. "What did you see?" Centaur looked at her, his eyes still glowing with inner light. "They've been waiting for us," he said simply, "and now they offer a choice." Time seemed to stand still aboard the black ship as it hovered at the center of the 7 massive structures. The bridge crew remained frozen in place, caught between fear and wonder. Captain Mira stood before Centaur, waiting for him to explain the choice he had mentioned. "What choice?" she finally asked when he remained silent, his eyes still glowing with that strange inner light. Centaur blinked, the glow fading slightly as he focused on her. "The architects offer sanctuary," he said, his voice carrying unusual harmonics that made it sound as if multiple people were speaking at once. "But their help comes with a price." Before he could explain further, Dr. Aaliyah approached with her scanner. "Commander, your body is changing at the cellular level. Your brain activity has tripled, and there are energy patterns I've never seen in a human being before." Centaur nodded as if this was expected. "It's the activation of the genetic modifications my grandmother spoke of. I am becoming what I was always meant to be, a bridge between humanity and the architects." Around them, the ship hummed with new energy. Crew members reported systems coming back online stronger than before, damage repairing itself, even the air recyclers working at perfect efficiency. Whatever energy the 7 structures had bathed them in was healing the black ship. "Captain," Reed called from his station, "I'm detecting movement at the edge of the nebula. Collective ships, at least 5 of them. They found a way in." The momentary peace shattered as the crew snapped back to battle readiness. Mira moved to the command chair, issuing orders with practiced efficiency. "Time to intercept?" she asked. "At their current speed, less than 30 minutes, Reed replied. Mira turned to Centaur. "Whatever this choice is, we need to make it quickly." Centaur closed his eyes, reaching out with his transformed consciousness. He could sense the architect's presence more clearly now. Vast, ancient minds observing them with curiosity and compassion. They had withdrawn from the galaxy eons ago, choosing isolation over conflict with the expanding collective. But they had never abandoned their interest in humanity, the species they had helped guide since its earliest days. When he opened his eyes again, the glow had intensified. "They offer us protection," he said. "A place among them, safe from the collective, but to accept means changing, evolving beyond our current form." "Evolving?" Dr. Aaliyah asked, scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "How?" "Abandoning our physical bodies," Centaur explained, "transforming our consciousness into energy patterns similar to theirs, becoming like them." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the implication sank in. "That's not survival, Commander," Vance said flatly. "That's extinction with a pretty name." "Is it?" Centaur challenged. "If your mind, your memories, your essential self continues, is it really death? Or just a different form of existence?" Mira shook her head. "We need more information before we can make a decision this momentous. The crew deserves a choice." "I agree," Centaur said. "And there's more you need to understand. About the collective, about why they hunt us so relentlessly." He moved to the center of the bridge, and as he did, the air around him shimmered. A holographic display formed, but unlike anything their technology could produce. 3-dimensional images appeared, showing Earth as it was millions of years ago. "The architects visited Earth when humanity was in its infancy," Centaur explained as the images shifted, showing strange crystal vessels descending from the skies. "They saw potential in early humans, not just for intelligence, but for a specific kind of consciousness. They made subtle changes to your ancestors, planting seeds that would flower over millennia. The hologram showed human evolution accelerating, brain size increasing, societies forming." "What kind of changes?" Dr. Aaliyah asked, captivated despite herself. "The capacity for abstract thought, symbolic reasoning, art, music, dreams," Centaur replied. "But most importantly, the ability to evolve consciousness itself, to transcend biological limitations through technology, and eventually, through energy transformation." The display changed, showing a possible future where humans evolved into beings of pure energy and consciousness, no longer bound by physical form. "This is what the collective fears," Centaur continued. "Not what humanity is now, but what it was designed to become. The collective absorbs physical species, technology, resources, but they cannot absorb or control energy beings like the architects. To them, humanity represents an existential threat, a species that might evolve beyond their ability to control or destroy." Commander Vance scoffed. "So they're trying to wipe us out before we can become gods? Seems a bit far-fetched." "Not gods," Centaur corrected. "Just different. Free in ways the collective can never be." As he spoke, his transformation accelerated. His skin now glowed brightly enough to cast shadows, the patterns beneath his surface moving faster, more purposefully. Though his form remained human-shaped, he seemed less solid somehow, as if the boundary between his body and the surrounding air was becoming permeable. Dr. Aaliyah kept scanning him, her face reflecting both professional fascination and personal concern. "It's happening to you already, isn't it? The transformation." Centaur nodded. I'm further along the path because of my grandmother's heritage. My DNA was already part architect. The process is easier for me, but still challenging. And painful? She asked softly, noticing how he occasionally winced. Yes, he admitted, but also beautiful. His eyes held a faraway look. I can sense so much more now. The ship, the nebula, the stars beyond. Even your thoughts, not words but emotions, patterns. Captain Mira stepped forward. You said, we have a choice. What exactly are our options? Centaur refocused on her. 3 paths lie before us. First, we can reject the architect's offer and try to escape the nebula before the collective arrives. The architects will not stop us, but they cannot protect us once we leave. Second, accept their offer. Begin the transformation. Become like them. Beings of energy and consciousness no longer bound by physical form. Safe from the collective forever. And the third option? Mira pressed. A compromise. The architects can help us modify our ship, give us technology to hide from the collective more effectively. They can show us safe paths through the galaxy, places where we might find other survivors. But eventually, the collective will find us again. It's only a matter of time. From his tactical station, Reed called out, Captain, collective ship's now 20 minutes away. They're accelerating. Mira paced the bridge, weighing impossible choices. I can't make this decision for everyone, she finally said. The crew needs to know, to choose for themselves. There's no time for a vote, Vance argued. There has to be, Mira insisted. This isn't just about survival. It's about what it means to be human. Centaur nodded. The architects understand. They will hold the collective at bay long enough for your crew to decide. But know this, the choice need not be the same for everyone. What do you mean? Dr. Aaliyah asked. Some may choose to evolve, others to remain human. The architects can accommodate both. Those who wish to continue in physical form can take the modified ship and the knowledge the architects offer. Those who choose transformation will stay here. As he spoke, Chintor's transformation progressed visibly. His body now seemed composed more of light than solid matter. Though his features remained recognizable, the crew watched in a mixture of fear and fascination as he demonstrated what they might become. And what about you, Commander? Mira asked quietly. What is your choice? Chintor looked down at his luminous hands. I think my path was chosen, long ago, though I didn't know it. I'm already changing, already becoming something new. He looked up at her with eyes that now seemed to contain galaxies. But I won't abandon you or the crew. Whatever path humanity chooses, I will help ease the transition. Dr. Aaliyah's scanner beeped urgently. Captain, the commander's physical form is becoming unstable. If this continues. I know, Chintor said calmly. Soon I will exist more as energy than matter. But my consciousness, myself, remains intact, expanded, but still me. Captain, Mira made her decision. We need to inform the crew immediately. I'll address them from here. She turned to communications. Ship-wide channel now. As the channel opened, Mira spoke with the clear authority that had kept them alive through years of running. This is your captain speaking. We have made contact with an ancient species called the Architects. They offer us protection from the collective, but at a significant cost that each of you must understand before deciding. She explained the situation concisely. The approaching collective ships, the 3 options before them, and the transformation that acceptance of the Architect's offer would entail. This is not a decision I can make for you, she concluded. Each crew member must choose their own path. Report to your section leaders within 10 minutes to register your choice. That is all. As the channel closed, silence fell over the bridge. The enormity of the moment weighed on all of them. Through the view screen, they could see the 7 massive structures pulsing in perfect synchronization, waiting for humanity's answer. Reed broke the silence. Collective ships 15 minutes out. They're charging weapons. Centaur, now more. Light than man moved toward the center of the bridge. "The time for decision is upon us," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "But know this. Whatever you choose, humanity will survive, though perhaps not in the form you once knew." Around him, the air shimmered with potential, with futures yet to be written. The choice that would determine the fate of the human species now rested in the hands of the last survivors aboard the black ship. 10 minutes felt like both an eternity and an instant, as the black ship's crew made the most important decision of their lives. In the mess hall, the recreation area, and the crew quarters, people huddled in small groups, discussing, arguing, and sometimes simply holding each other in silence. Some wept, others prayed, and a few stood alone, lost in private thoughts. On the bridge, Captain Mira watched the timer count down. 5 minutes until the collective arrives, Reed announced, his voice tight with tension. "And our crew's decision?" Mira asked. Lieutenant K looked up from her console where reports from section leaders were coming in. "It's divided, Captain. About 60% want to remain human and take the modified ship. The rest..." She hesitated. "The rest have chosen transformation." Mira closed her eyes briefly. She had expected this outcome, yet hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that twisted her heart. Whatever happened next, the black ship's crew, their makeshift family forged through years of running and fighting, would be split forever. "And you, Captain?" Chintor asked, his form now barely contained within human shape, light spilling from him in gentle waves. "What is your choice?" All eyes turned to Mira. As captain, she had not yet declared her decision, wanting her crew to choose freely without her influence. "My place is with the ship," she said firmly. "With those who wish to remain human and continue the fight. They will need leadership in the difficult days ahead." Chintor nodded, acceptance in his luminous gaze. "And you, Dr. Aaliyah? Commander Vance?" Aaliyah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with caution. "I choose transformation," she said. "The opportunity to understand consciousness beyond physical form. It's everything I've studied my entire life." Vance scowled. "I'll stay human, thank you. No offense, Commander, but what you're becoming..." He gestured at Chintor's glowing form. "That's not for me." "No offense taken," Chintor replied with a smile that somehow remained warm despite his increasingly alien appearance. "Each path has its own courage." Reed's console beeped urgently. "Captain, collective ships entering the nebula's outer boundary, 3 minutes to weapons range." "We're out of time," Mira said. "Commander Chintor, what do we do?" "Now?" Chintor raised his hands, which now seemed composed entirely of light. "The architects are ready. Those who choose to stay human should move to the ship's port side. Those who choose transformation, to starboard." The order was relayed throughout the ship. Crew members said hasty goodbyes, some calm and accepting, others tearful and desperate. Families faced the hardest decisions, parents and children sometimes choosing different paths, partners embracing one last time before separating. In engineering, Chief Engineer Tomas had constructed a makeshift quantum transmitter using parts from the ship's communication array. As one of those choosing to remain human, he had worked frantically to build this device at Chintor's request. "It's ready," he reported via comm. "But I'm not sure how powerful the signal will be." "It will be enough," Chintor assured him. "Bring it to the bridge." As Thomas arrived with the jury-rigged transmitter, Chintor placed his luminous hands upon it. The device hummed with new energy, its components restructuring into more efficient configurations under his touch. "What is this for?" Mira asked. "A message," Chintor explained, "to all remaining human outposts scattered across the stars. They deserve to know what we've discovered, the choice that lies before them." Reed's voice cut through the moment. "Collective ships 1 minute to weapons range. They're charging main cannons." Through the view screen, they could see the 5 collective vessels approaching. Massive biomechanical constructs shaped like predatory sea creatures from Earth's ancient oceans. Their hulls rippled with weapon ports opening like hungry mouths. "Now," Chintor said, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to resonate through the ship itself. The separation must begin. He raised his arms and the 7 structures surrounding the black ship pulsed in unison. A wave of energy washed over the vessel, but instead of damaging it, the energy began to divide it, not physically tearing it apart, but creating a kind of dimensional split. On screens throughout the ship, crew members watched in awe as a perfect duplicate of the black ship seemed to phase into existence alongside the original. Yet it wasn't truly a duplicate. It was the same ship existing in 2 states simultaneously, the quantum possibilities of both choices manifesting in reality. Those who choose to remain human, Centaur instructed, his voice now heard in every corner of both vessels. Focus your thoughts on the physical, on your bodies, on the sensation of breath and heartbeat. The crew members on the port side did, as instructed, some closing their eyes in concentration. Those who choose transformation focus on consciousness itself, not what you perceive, but that which perceives. Focus on the awareness behind your thoughts. On the starboard side, crew members followed this guidance, many experiencing an immediate sensation of lightness, of boundaries beginning to dissolve. As the process continued, the 2 versions of the ship began to separate more distinctly. In the version choosing humanity, all remained solid and unchanged. In the other, both people and ship began to glow with the same luminescence that now defined Centaur, matter starting its transition to energy. The collective has fired, Reed shouted from his station on the human ship. Impact in 10 seconds. Centaur, now fully transformed into a being of pure light yet still recognizable in shape, moved to the quantum transmitter. It's time for the message, he said, his voice somehow both human and much more. So that all humanity can make their own choice. With a thought, he activated the enhanced device. It hummed to life, drawing power not from the ship's systems but from Centaur himself. Through this connection, he began to broadcast not just words or images but his complete experience, the truth of humanity's engineered origins, the architect's offer, and the choice that now lay before all survivors of Earth. The message streamed outward, bypassing normal communication channels, traveling through quantum entanglement to reach every human outpost, every hiding place, every last survivor across the stars. As the transmission concluded, the first collective weapons fire reached the nebula's edge, but instead of continuing toward the ships, the energy beams curved and dispersed, absorbed by the protective field the 7 architect structures had created. They cannot reach us yet, Centaur explained, but this protection is temporary. Both ships must depart soon, each to its own destiny. Captain Mira stood tall on the bridge of the human ship, watching as their sister vessel and its crew continued their transformation, becoming more energy than matter with each passing moment. What happens to them now? She asked Centaur, whose form was visible on their view screen though he physically remained with the transforming ship. They will join the architects, he answered. Learn from them, grow beyond current understanding. Eventually they may become architects themselves, guardians of consciousness throughout the universe. And us? Mira asked. Those who stay human? Your ship has been modified with architect technology. It will take you to safe regions of space where the collective has not yet reached. There are others there, human survivors who may join you. The knowledge I've shared will help you understand your potential, even in physical form. Centaur's expression became solemn. The path ahead will not be easy for either group. Those who transform must learn to exist in ways they cannot yet imagine. Those who remain human must continue to survive in a galaxy where the collective hunts them. Both paths require courage. On the bridge of the human ship, Commander Vance stepped forward. We didn't survive this long to give up now, he said with unexpected gentleness. We'll find a way. Centaur smiled. That determination is why the architects chose humanity in the first place. The fully transformed ship now glowed with the same blue-white light as the 7 structures. Its hull had become transparent, revealing the crew within, forms of light that still held human shape but were clearly no longer bound by physical limitations. It's time, Centaur said. Both ships must now choose their paths. As the 2 vessels prepared to depart, one to the hidden regions of space where humanity might rebuild, the other to join the architects in their ancient vigil, Centaur transmitted one final message to both crews. "We don't all need to choose the same path," his voice echoed in their minds. "That's what makes us human, our ability to forge different futures from the same past. Some will guard our physical heritage, keeping alive what it means to exist, in body as well as mind. Others will explore the frontiers of consciousness itself, evolving toward what humanity was always meant to become. But remember," he continued, "whichever path you've chosen, you carry the essence of humanity with you. In physical form, or as beings of energy, you are the children of Earth. That connection can never be broken." As the black ship separated into its two destinies, one accelerating toward distant stars where other human survivors waited, the other dissolving into patterns of light to join the architects, Centaur activated the ship's final defensive protocol. Not to destroy their enemies, but to create a momentary bridge between worlds, allowing both vessels to escape the approaching collective. The nebula flared with blinding light as the protocol engaged. When it faded, both ships were gone, each carrying half of humanity's last free survivors toward radically different futures. The 7 architect structures began to fade as well, returning to their hidden dimension until they might be needed again. In the empty space they left behind, the collective vessels slowed, their sensors detecting no trace of their prey. The hunt would continue elsewhere, but for now, humanity had escaped, and more importantly, had found not one path forward, but 2. The black ship's journey had ended. Humanity's new journey had just begun. To be continued in Chapter 51, Divergent.
Paths